Right, hey Ron, I'm Klloo. So, a little bit of a content lull this week. It's just been kicking my ass, right? My dog's sick, and then I myself am sick, but not in the traditional sense. So, I'm starting my masters, and for that, I'll be working with certain animals, meaning I have to get certain vaccinations, right? Which has led to testing before you actually get certain vaccinations. And my immune system is obviously doing its job, which is fantastic, and potentially I won't actually need X vaccination, but I am super run down, right, because of it. So forgive me if I'm sounding a bit nasally, right? But I've been having a lot of fun with Marlyn, and I think I have a decent, solid death dealer list that is also kind of cheap, right? Which is really good because you can have lots of fun, you can be somewhat competitive, and you can do it at a lesser cost to a lot of the top end decks. But, right, it is Death Dealer, meaning it is going to go away soon, right? Once Azalea leaves, Death Dealer LL's with her with the signature weapon system. So get your fill while you can. But anyway, let's start with the equipment. So obviously we're taking Marlyn, we're taking Death Dealer. If we're taking Death Dealer, we're taking New Horizon. That's basically the shtick, right? So through Death Dealer, you get to load an arrow. Then if you load an arrow, you get to draw. If you draw, you get to load another arrow through Marlyn, right? So that's when New Horizon really gets its value. And basically this runs as either an aggro or a mid-range deck. You have a lot of flexibility to actually change it up and either hold cards, try and go for a really big turn, or just keep the pressure on. Now, in terms of the other pieces, we have Trench of Sunken Treasure and our Sea Sarong, which also helps again with this sort of package. So the Sarong, for instance, your Arsenal Blue Arrow, and then that's a free go again Blue Arrow, which can be pretty debilitating to your opponents, right? And in a sense, a must block, right? You have like Sleep Dart, Perfecting, the Frailty one, right? So Sarong is just fantastic in adding one extra arrow to that sequence. And then Trench, on the other side of that, is if you have to Arsenal something that you're not overly interested in using, right? You can use it to gain a resource, to feed into Death Dealer, or of course you can use it to salvage a card, right, against Arsenal Destruction. So yeah, really nice core set of equipment. For the more flexible pieces, we have our Bullseye Braces and Quiver of Rustling Leaves sort of as our starting pieces. So Bullseye Braces, fantastic. It's another extra arrow. If you have no cards in your arsenal, you may put an arrow card face up. If you do, it gets +1 till the end of turn. Go again. Also has some AB, so that's really nice. And then similarly, the Quiver does something similar, right? Instant, pay 3. Build the top card of your deck. If it's an arrow, put face up into your arsenal and destroy the Quiver. So that can also lead to an extra arrow on certain turns. Now, in terms of the actual switches, for a little bit more arcane protection, we have our Enchanted Quiver, right? So that replaces the Quiver of Rustling Leaves, and you can use it again if you need that just a little bit of damage prevention, right? And then for mech, I really like the Glidewell fins. Now, because of its cost, it fails in comparison to the Bullseye Braces, right, and the flexibility, but it does have that Battle Worn 1. So it's the exact same effect, essentially, as Bullseye, with the one slight difference of you can use Glidewell Fins if you have a card in your arsenal, and New Horizon is providing you an extra arsenal slot. Bullseye Braces, you cannot, right? It has that text if you have no cards in your arsenal. So there is that little bit of difference, but other than that, you can pretty much get away with Bullseye anyway, right? You can clear your arsenal, shoot your arrows, and then Bullseye something back, right? Maybe there are scenarios where the Glidewell Fin, especially with like Bolton shots to reload and extend your turn that way, it might be a little bit better. But from my playing, I've enjoyed Bullseye enough to run with that. And then, again, Glidewell Fins for mech specifically. And the Planetaire, right? So playing around, damage prevention is just something that we can use over and over again, right? And I'm a little bit less likely to use the Glidewell Fins over the Bullseye Braces, because again, there's that pay cost. So generally speaking, you block with it and it sticks around, whereas Bullseyes I end up using pretty quickly, right? Even against Arcane, because we have Trench, which is also AB1, right? Okay, so card-wise, we have a string of go-again arrows, some blue arrows, some other arrows, some buffs, and some utility pieces. So, nice, easy, it's basically all the good go-again arrows in red and yellow. So Falcon Wing, Sickle, and Bolton. And then Swift Shot as well, right, is another really good arrow. One thing that I have been tripped up on, right, it only has go again the first turn you load it face up. After that, it does not have go again. So salvaging this for a turn, right, leaving it face up in your arsenal thinking that you have go again for the following turn is not the case. And yeah, I've learned that the bad way a few times, right? So yeah, nice string of go again arrows, some blue arrows again to work with Sea Sarong, Searing Shot, Widowmaker, Infecting Shot, Withering Shot, and Sleep Dart. Now these are a little bit more flexible, right, depending on the matchup, but we don't actually have that much of a sideboard open to slot in other blue arrows. So I think these are the best of the lot, right, against all the current major matchups. Searing Shot just for the little extra pressure. Widowmaker is fantastic for trying to get your opponent to block that initial arrow. And then Sleep Dart, turning off your hero abilities. There are a lot of heroes currently in the meta that obviously are very reliant on their hero ability, so turning that off is fantastic. Gravy Bones especially, right? And then Infecting Shot and Withering Shot, so going against, someone with a weapon or just trying to get that little extra chip damage, right? For the other arrows, Endless Arrow, just because it's a nice your opponent has to think about whether or not to block it, especially if you have Trench, because it's just a free extra resource for the following turn if you cycle it away. Otherwise, it's just, a repeatable arrow. And then Remorseless, because it is just a nice, I think it's the strongest one-cost arrow in terms of effect. Yeah, Remorseless is nice. Then buffs, we have Prismatic... Excuse me, I'm getting very phlegmy, talking too much. Slow down. We have Prismatic Leyline and Razor Reflexes, right? So both of these can be anywhere from, a +4 to generally a +6, right? Which is just fantastic value. That puts them above rate, especially as a yellow, right? And then in the case of Prismatic Leyline, it is also a 3-block card, which is just fantastic. So Prismatic Leyline, red arrow gets +1, yellow gets +2, blue gets +3, and then rain razors, each arrow gets +2. So if we're going for the full Monty, right, which is basically a blue off of Sea Lace, right, then another arrow would go again, hopefully a yellow in the case of Prismatic, and then an arrow to close it, right? So most likely either another blue or a Remorseless Endless Arrow, or even just another go again arrow, right? Then we can get that full value. But even if we're not, again, if we're just getting a +4 out of it, heck, even a +3 as a yellow puts it above right? So both really nice. And then Razor Reflex, I've really liked as just a finisher, if you will, but also an extender on some really powerful turns. So the flexibility of it and the fact that I don't think people expect it is just really, really nice. I have won a fair few games with the +3. I was actually taking the red, but I've figured I don't need the red, right? A +2 is enough. And the fact that it's yellow means it's something I can pitch away and save for a late game, right? Because if you sort of look at that arrow cost, right? If we're not starting with a blue arrow, it's like a 0-1 and then 1 for Death Dealer. So having 2 resources to 3 resources to pitch is the sweet spot for us. And then in terms of utility, we have 3 of a kind, line, and hook. So 3 of a kind, just fantastic in Marlynn, right? Can lead to some extra arrows, can just lead to a bunch of resources to pitch. And then line and hook, right? Essentially fetch another arrow, and we are taking a whole bunch of arrows. So line hits anything that doesn't have go again, we get another go again arrow. Hook hits anything that does go again, we get another go again arrow, right? So both are really nice. And then again, they're 3 blocks and blue pitchable. So yeah, fantastic usability across the board, right? Whether or not we're just blocking out with it, pitching it, or again, playing it for its actual effect, right? The overpower obviously doesn't matter because we don't have any substantial big arrows for hook, line, and sinker. We don't have anything great to utilize with sinker, right? So, sideboard-wise, we have Netling Shot, Take Cover, Feign Death, and Try Shot, and generally the matchups that I put these in for, right? So Netling Shot for Gravy, just switch off the allies. There's obviously nothing else in the game currently that this works on, right? So, yeah, it's specifically there for Gravy. Take Cover if we're against an aggro matchup, right? Just for a little bit extra defense. Here we go again. Feign Death for Assassin is also really great, right? Because they have a huge tendency to flick, right? Do that 1 first damage, mark you, and then all of a sudden you throw out Feign Death and you're golden for whatever they're trying to do. And then Try Shot for Fatigue because we are sort of close to an aggro deck, right? So we are going to run out of cards, meaning you need a real big set of burst turns, right? You do little, you set up, you burst, right? That's how I generally play against Fatigue. So having Try Shot is just nice in that scenario because it can lead to a nice, powerful turn, even if you're just using it to draw cards off of Death Dealer and not using it each time for, say, 2 arrows, because it's going to be very unlikely, right? There's just not enough go-again arrows. So, yeah, just as a way to try and find, say, a Rain Razors, a 3 of a kind itself, it's just a fantastic draw engine, essentially, right? With Death Dealer and with the amount of arrows that we do have, right? Again, low to go again. Don't load another arrow so you're not gunked up, so you can reuse Death Dealer. Yeah, it works out nicely. Now, in terms of going first and going second, I prefer to go first because the idea here is to simply end with a go again arrow face up and a blue arrow prime for Sea Lace Sarong, right? Leading into a second, more powerful turn. It gives you the option to then go a bit more mid-rangey, where once you have that arsenal set up, you can just block out till you get the perfect hand, if you will, right? Where you have your buff, you have a Rain Razors would be perfect, and another go again arrow and another 4th arrow, right, for Death Dealer. So yeah, once you're primed, you can just block until you're really comfortable to have a above rate turn. But other than that, going first to me is the better option. But going second is fine too, right? All you have to do is block out and just prioritize keeping a go again arrow. But if you obviously just need to throw all 4 cards to block, you might as well. There's no harm in that. You can't get something into your arsenal, right? So yeah, just block out. But yeah, if you can keep a go again arrow, keep a go again arrow, because then that sets up your first death dealer turn, where you death dealer, go again arrow, one other arrow, right? If it's another go again, you can leave it in your arsenal face up. Then again, try and slot a blue in face down. Otherwise, just go again, normal arrow, go again, normal arrow, right? That's the that's essentially the basic turn, right? So death dealer off of the blue, float some resources, load a go again arrow, find another arrow, whether it's in hand already or you draw it, use that other arrow, and then set up for a following turn. So again, the idea here is if you want to just go straight aggro, right? This is just what you're doing on repeats. Otherwise, if you want to, try to go a bit more mid-rangey, you set up, you load a go again arrow, you load a blue face down, and you just try to preserve that arsenal until your opponent sends a slightly weaker turn, right? And then you go full throttle back at them. So a follow-up turn to that setup would be something like this, right? Where we go Infecting Shot off of Sea Lace. That's our first arrow with Go Again. Then we go Death Dealer. Then we go another Go Again arrow. Then we go a Finisher arrow, right? So 3 to 4 arrows is what we're aiming for. This is where, Rain Razors comes into effect as a +6. Beautiful. Prismatic Leyline, depending on the colors. Here it would be a +4. If we could find a yellow arrow, then we get that +6, right? So yeah, really, really nice to, again, either just go full steam or prep and go. Prep and go, right? Now, in terms of the utility cards, so essentially these are just to add to the chain, right? 3 of a kind can lead to 1 to 2 extra arrows, depending on what we draw. If you draw a go again arrow, they can easily go into your arsenal. If you draw, a non-go again arrow, it's a bit rougher, right? Because you don't want it just left face up in your arsenal. You don't want to clog up your arsenal because you don't really have a way to get rid of it other than just playing it. And we're not a big pump deck, so leaving an arrow face up in your arsenal is actually pretty rough, right? So generally speaking, 1 to 2 extra arrows. If you draw, say, 1 go again arrow, 2 other non-go again arrows, I would wait. Don't load anything because I would always play 3 of a kind before Death Dealer, right? So you have Death Dealer usable with the cards you've drawn from 3 of a kind, right? So yeah, it can be a little rough, but I think there's plenty of go again arrows to really capitalize on it. And then for line, again, if you find an arrow, it gets go again. Hook, you find an arrow, it gets +1. Bullseye Braces, load from hand, and Quiver, load from the deck as well. So you have 3 ways to load from the deck, which is really nice. And then Bullseye, again, use it with Bolt and Shot to get that reload effect. Can allow you to play multiple 3 of a kinds, right? It means that a lot of cards that your opponent sort of neglects are a lot more threatening than they might think. Because even Bolt and Shot into line or hook is still really, really nice, right? Because you have that go again, and then you'll be able to play it in the sense that, we're on a 3 of a kind turn, right? So yeah, capitalizing on 3 of a kind, essentially what I just said. I probably should have flipped this slide. My brain's a bit rattled. I forget what I've actually set up, right, in terms of resources. So yeah, Bullseye Braces to give Bolt and Shot the +1, give it go again, the on-hit reload, will then let you reload a 3 of a kind, a line, or even a buff like Rain Razors. Although I don't think you'd really want to play Rain Razors at that point, right? You'd probably looking at 2 more arrows off Death Dealer, so maybe it's not that fantastic, but it could lead to more if you use these things in conjunction, right? If you have hook, for instance, into Bullseye Braces, into 3 of a kind, into more stuff. You can go really, really wide is what I'm trying to say. If the right pieces line up and it's not that hard to actually get it going. Again, if you go down the more mid-rangey route where you're just blocking out and trying to set up and find that perfect hand, right? So, to remember, Arsenal must be empty on Death Dealer, Bullseye, and Bolt and Shot, right? Reload is a older keyword. It was before New Horizon, so it does have that text. If you have no cards in your arsenal, you may put a card face down, right? So again, arsenal must be clear in order to activate. Well, you can activate, but to use any of these effects. On the other side of that, we have Quiver, we have Line, and we have Hook, which are all newer, and they allow you to still utilize New Horizon, right? But you do have to have that card face up for New Horizon to actually proc. So that side, let's just take a look at the other options, if you will, for the deck. So, of course, the deck list will be in the description, but yeah, the big expensive hurdle for this deck is definitely the New Horizon, but unlike other Marlynn lists, right, it doesn't rely on riches, it doesn't rely on the gold, it doesn't really rely on opting, right? I've just done my best to tune the deck around, kind of hoping never miss, right? There's not enough misses. It's kind of like the KO Armory deck to me, right? So, yeah, I do think this is a nice, cheap, fun. Again, aggro to mid-range, depending on how you want to play it. I always play it just aggro. I can't be bothered blocking, but you can definitely set up traps and wait for a really, really strong turn, right? With that 2-arrow start into 4 cards, right? Now, aside from the actual deck, the other options here are plenty, right? You have enough blues, you could technically take Conquerors just because it's a really high value card. You could lower the cost overall with arrows, like Dry Powder Shot instead of, say, Endless Arrow. Could be a thought there since it has that +1 extra power, but yeah, Endless Arrow cycling back is definitely nice. The buffs, again, I want this to be a good blockable deck as well for that mid-range side of things. So we are, aside from Rain Razors, everything blocks for 3, right? Yeah, aside from Razor Reflex and Rain Razors, they're the only 2 cards that fail on block. Everything else is a 3 block, which is really good. Heat Seeker is okay, but again, having a arrow face up can really gunk you up because it leads to a weaker turn because we really want Death Dealer, right? We really want to go again arrow. We really want to, a couple go again arrows. So I don't really like Heat Seeker. Give and Take and say Memorial Ground are also really nice to get something back. Give and Take can hit any action card, so it can hit 3 of a kind, right? So that could lead to quite the powerhouse. So I was running it for a little bit, but it does then obviously make Hook and Line a little bit worse. Same with Quiver, right? Since we're trying to hit an arrow. But, again, if you're playing mid-rangey, you have that liberty a bit more where you can pitch stack correctly and line everything up the way you want it, right? So you can definitely slot in Give and Take. There's lots of choices that could work, right? I just think that the current list I have is the best of what we have, right? Again, blue arrow wise, you can definitely take different blue arrows depending on what your matchups are going to be. Cogs of Rathe, it obviously really works because it's just equivalent to any arrow, right? It can replace any arrow in the sense that you're going to basically use it to replicate another arrow. Plus, then you get the Ponder, so the Arsenal load. So it is obviously super impactful. It goes into almost every Ranger and Assassin deck, right? But I don't think it's necessary, but it is obviously easy enough to slot in, right? So again, just get rid of Tri-Shot, right? This is probably the weakest link. Again, I really like it for Fatigue, but it is what it is. It can still whiff, right, if you don't find the go again arrows. But we do have a decent chunk, right? Even without Bolton Shots, we have 6, 12, and 15. We have 15, so it should be 1 and 4, plus the Bolton Shots, right? But they do require one of those buffs to actually work, right? Be it the Bullseye Braces, the Glidewell Fins, or something else, right? So maybe, at that same sense, a bit more pumps could also work. The reloads off of Take Aim, or the the one that costs 1 more, right? I don't think I actually, oh, no, I do, Overflex, right? So these are definitely okay, right? Reload is definitely useful. You can reload at Blue Arrow, again, Arsenal must be clear, flip it, and then have that go again off of Sea Lace. So the reload definitely has its use, but again, I think this is the best lineup out of the bunch. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of possible working pieces, right? Again, even if you want to go a bit more control based, right? You can take like 1 copy of Rapid Fire and you're just holding out Rapid Fire, 3 of a kind, and then just sending a real big turn. But yeah, I'm having a blast with it. The link will be in the description. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah.